Welcome to the Level Up Your Band podcast, episode 91. Hello, and welcome back to Level Up Your Band podcast. My name is Gavin Patterson, and I'm here with a flowery shirted Julian Pombo.
Yes, I don't think I've worn this shirt since the Erska tour that we did years ago.
Yeah, I think I've seen you wear
Have
this
you?
since.
Have I? I don't remember. I feel like I haven't worn it in ages, but definitely perfect clothes for November weather.
Yeah. Lovely, beautiful, stunning weather.
Mm-hmm.
My God, did you see the wind the other day? No? Or maybe it's just because we live in the top of a hill, so...
Yeah, no, we live at the bottom, so...
It was like, I thought the flipping walls were going to cave in at one point. I was like, all right. Yeah, it's one of those moments where you're like, everyone's like looking around like, is the structural integrity okay here? Are we going to be all right? But yeah, November weather.
Yeah. Not talking about the weather. This isn't Level Up Your Meteorology podcast. Sorry, I need to stop making that joke. It's not funny.
Level up. Well, a couple of weeks ago it was level up your bandwidth. I don't think
Yeah. I think that I peaked. I peaked there. I think that was my best one.
Yeah.
So what are we talking about today?
Today we are talking about a sort of running theme.
Yes.
That we have talked about all the time, but not specifically, and that is authenticity. So I think nowadays, especially, authenticity is a pretty scarce thing, scarce resource, if you want to call it that.
Yeah.
Genuine authenticity.
Yeah, genuine. Like there's some things that will appear authentic, but then you just have to do a little bit of digging, and then you find out, this person is actually not real. They're an actor, and they do this, that, the next thing.
Yeah. And it's kind of an analogy would be the Philosopher's Stone. Mm-hmm. You know, those who try to find or seek the Philosopher's Stone to use it will never find it, but those who want to seek it and not use it will find it. And authenticity, when you try to be authentic, you aren't authentic because you're trying. Authenticity comes from not trying and just being yourself, and just, it's kind of like the more you try and become authentic, the less authentic you'll become. It's kind of a weird thing. So like we'll talk a little bit about like where it comes from and what it is. Well, why should you want to be authentic? Well, I think the evidence is clear that the more authentic you are, the more people can relate and gravitate towards you. Whether it's if you're a media outlet or an artist, the authentic stuff tends to do better. People are genuinely authentic.
Yeah. By that, we don't mean that, or at least the way I understand it, is that you can being authentic doesn't mean that everything is indie and homegrown and things like that. You can get big sort of corporate companies and stuff that will hold true to their values, and like just that still makes you authentic. If that makes sense.
Yep.
You know,
the product itself is authentic. How you deliver it and all that's a separate thing. I'm just talking about like the thing you're coming for, the music, in this case the music.
Yeah.
So 15 songwriters writing a song for Beyonce, that ain't authentic. It's like that's a committee almost of people deciding what chords go where and what bit goes where, and I don't know. It's less authentic anyway.
In a sense, it's less authentic, but a lot of people already already know that.
Yeah.
So like for me, like if I find myself listening to Beyonce, I don't sit there and go, like if I judge the music
Yeah,
on like that particular basis, if it, especially if it's written to come across as if it's been sort of like homegrown and like done by one person kind of thing, then that is an authentic. I don't think
she sells it.
she
quite
sells
well,
it.
as she's authentic.
Yeah,
She's probably one of the more authentic
yeah,
pop artists out there. Like, because you see like videos of her, and she's like, unmiked and just singing like on a phone or something, and it's like no autotune, no nothing, and she's just authentically amazing. And there's no frills, like that. She's just good.
Yeah. But the music itself, I think I don't think they're trying to hide
No,
the fact that it's been written by like 15 to 20 people, like, and that's fine.
and it is fine. Yeah, you can get away with it. It's really hard though. This is like manufacturing authenticity. If it didn't work ever, no one would do it ever. But sometimes you can be fooled into this is manufactured authenticity. Oh, is it? Like if you dig real deep, maybe you'll find that it's maybe not coming from an authentic place.
Yes.
But it's easier to be authentic, or it's easier to succeed by being authentic than to manufacture it.
Yeah.
And I think that if you're starting out, that's the best road to start on, is authentically. So, yeah. How to be authentic.
Yeah.
Well, that's a bit of a, what do you call it? A contradiction, because the minute you try,
You're suddenly not.
you're suddenly not. So, but you can change behaviors or set about ways of practice.
Yeah. It's going to be one of these annoying answers, which is it means nothing, but it means a lot. It's like, it's basically just be yourself, and I really hate that as an answer to anything, because it's in a sense it's really vapid, but in this case it's like the only answer.
Aye. So
to the question, how to be authentic, was be yourself, and then it's like, well, what does it mean to be yourself? I'm starting to sound like Jordan Peterson.
I am myself.
How
can I not be myself?
Yeah.
What does that mean? So I've written here. This is an actual thing, by the way. If you Google like authenticity in art or music, there's like entire like articles written on this sort of stuff. So it's quite interesting. So authentic music is that which comes from the genuine individual's perspective.
Yeah.
Inauthentic music is that which comes from the individual's attempt at seeming authentic. Yeah. So that can take the form of copying, plagiarism, or forgery. And when I was looking up this topic, it talked about authenticity in art in the classical sense. So there were like sculptors that would forge and copy and basically plagiarize. So I imagine like back in the I don't know, 500 years ago or whatever, you were a sculptor.
Yeah.
You could get away with forgery because there was no Google, there was no way of knowing that was an original piece of art. If you were like a local sculptor, you could copy like famous pieces that maybe people didn't know about and pass them off as your own and stuff like that. Like forgery was a lot easier when people had less access to all the information that's out there. So this whole thing came out. Is this authentic, or were you using the correct methods? Like these marble or stone statues, perfectly smooth. You've seen those statues where they can make it look like the person is wearing like material, and the way like it's stone, but it looks like it's actual material. It's so well done. And I think I read this somewhere a while ago, and I don't know if it's true, but it would be cool if it is. That's where the word sincere comes from. So sincere, it's maybe not a direct translation, but it means without wax. So a sculptor could cheat. They could make a smooth stone sculpture by filling in all of the mistakes with wax. So basically, if you were sincere, it means that you sculpted without wax, which means you did an authentic job. And those who didn't used wax to try and get that authentic look. So that's where the word sincere comes from. I don't know if that's true, but it's cool.
No, I'm because I'm being bilingual. I'm sort of breaking it down, and it makes sense. I can because sin is without, and then I guess the word for wax in Spanish or in Latin, it escapes me.
Yeah.
But it adds up. So no, that makes sense.
Yeah. So it ties. Authenticity is really, really deeply linked to art. Because that's like there's a famous philosopher, I can't remember, said that the most authentic form of musical art is jazz, because freeform jazz, like pure improvisation, because it can't come from anywhere else but the individual. Like there's no in the moment of a solo or something. Yes, you're playing on your influences and stuff, but you can't really plagiarize as easy. Say unless it's you're just ripping off someone else's solo, but
which actually like part of like the whole jazz thing of like building up your vocabulary is by basically learning other people's solos and implementing them into your own solos, which is another thing. Anyway,
it's the same in rock. Guitarists learning licks. You learn like 1,000 licks from loads of different artists, and then you can use elements of all those licks and start to create your own, because you understand the rules. You know what works and what doesn't work in different contexts. I kind of got a little bit of that in playing keyboard. So you learn lots and lots of like keyboard lines and shapes and movements and stuff, and you start to see a regular pattern across all these different solos that you learn, and then you can start to weave your own solo in any given situation because you've learned the rules, because there are rules, like there's do's and don'ts in solos.
Yeah,
and you kind of get to learn like how it works by imitating. So, but it's not until you practice and observe that you can start to get the gist of what good soloists can do, or good musicians, and then you can start doing it yourself. And it comes from your experience. That's a part of authenticity is. Authenticity doesn't just spring out of a vacuum, because someone who's never played an instrument before and then just sit behind the kit and they just whack away. Yes, it's authentic, but it's not. It doesn't mean it's good. So we'll get into that later. But I just thought that was interesting that the idea of authenticity is actually really old, like hundreds and hundreds of years old, and there would be like, this is a forgery, like this is not authentic, and people feel like they've been, conned, basically. So, authenticity it's on its own, it's not good enough. Like I said, you need competence, knowledge, and experience. And I put here the antithesis of the tramp stamps.
That was a good one.
Episode 10 episodes ago or whatever it was. I can't remember. Yeah. Go back and listen to that one. They are like the embodiment of inauthenticity.
Of the kids are really into this at the moment, so let's write music that has that in it. And what will we do? We'll take one of the most sincere, authentic styles of music, genres of music, to do that in.
Yeah.
it's idiotic.
Yeah,
I don't
yeah.
know what they were thinking.
Yep.
But yeah, good
So
episode.
I've kind of broke it down a little bit in different parts of running a band, or so you've got writing, rehearsing, recording, performing, just general things. So we'll start with writing. How to be authentic. Remember to be authentic when you're writing music. So the one we always say is like, write what you know.
Yeah, that was one of the things that I did a songwriting course or module when I was at uni, and that was one of the things that we kind of learned was that you're better off writing about things that you know, and you'll actually be surprised about how much you actually know, because there might be one person, or a couple of people listening to the podcast sitting there going, well, my life so far has been pretty uneventful. Nothing, dramatic has happened to me, or I've not been anywhere interesting, or this, that, or whatever. But
what am I going to write about, kind of thing?
What are you going to write about? And at that point, there's actually lots of little interesting exercises that you can do. One of them, which I actually want to get back into, is you set a timer, 5 minutes, and you pick an object. I'm just the first one that comes into my that's in my field of view is conga. So you just look at it, and then you write words that are associated with conga.
Okay.
For 5 minutes.
Mm-hmm.
Just anything, round, wood, loud, drums, like stuff like that. And you just keep going, man-made. There you go. There's another a descriptive word. Synthesis, because it's like a combination of like a natural thing and like some man-made things.
Yep.
And some element animal parts. But anyway, that's for another. That's for another time.
So you can it's that inspiration.
But you can get inspiration, and then like that's one way of exercising your imagination, and you'll start drawing lines, like, and you'll start making connections here and there, and you'll end up coming up with interesting things.
Right. Even though you don't
write about.
Think you've got anything to write about, you probably do.
Yeah. It's really fun. My wife is a music teacher. Like teaches privately, and she always asks the kids, when they come in, they have like a 5-minute chat before the lesson, and she always asks them, did you do anything interesting in the weekend?
Mm-hmm.
And their natural response is to always go, no. And then she says, are you sure? And then they go, well, actually, we did do, it'll be
amazing,
something daft, like,
okay.
On Saturday, like, my mom and I made, like, handmade pizzas for dinner, that kind of thing.
That's pretty interesting.
That's pretty interesting. This is a whole process that goes into it. It's stuff like that,
Right.
So, your life is actually more interesting than you actually think it is. Like the human lived experience is extremely interesting.
Yeah, it might seem mundane, but
it might seem mundane, but even the mundane
Yep.
is interesting.
Well, I can't believe I'm doing it again. I'm going back to Tolkien. The hero of the Tolkien stories are mundane, uneventful little characters called hobbits.
Yeah.
Where they just live their lives. They're just their day-to-day routine. They're not. Do you know what I mean?
But that's what they're supposed to be. They are a personification, like the hobbits in general are a personification of a bunch of different things. But like the simple life,
normal people. Yeah, just everyday folk.
Everyday folk.
Yeah. So it's not. It's actually not that. Your life is not as boring as you think it is.
No.
Yeah. Fair. So. Yeah, write what you know, what you're familiar with, and don't write what you think people want to hear.
Yes.
Which is basically tramp stamps.
Yeah.
What do the kids like these days, kind of thing. Let's do that. Our best attempt.
You know, no. And I've been in bands that have been guilty of this, you know, like, and it never works, you know, writing what you think people want or writing what people tell you they want. That's another one, right? Like when people go, oh, why don't you do something like this or something like this?
Right.
I wonder if I should. I'm going to put them on blast a little bit because I know they do. I know they do it out of love, right? But they're always their ideas are always terrible.
Okay.
My mum and dad.
Okay.
Okay, and you'll find this a lot. In you know, your parents have always got the best of intentions. You know, they want to see your band succeed, right? And they'll tell you, oh, you know, why don't you do something like this, or why don't you try writing for this thing or that thing or the other thing? And I've always had to say to my parents, thank you,
Right.
but no, because the thing is that people have an idea of what's going to succeed, and I talked about this, I think, last time. Or no, I don't think I talked about it on the episode, but I was just talking about coffee in general, right? People always think that, I swear this ramble is going somewhere,
Okay.
right? People have when you ask people about coffee, right? Even people who don't know anything about coffee, and you ask them, what's a good coffee? And they'll say, rich and dark roast. It's not a good coffee. All the time,
No,
you know,
not necessarily.
Which is why when you go, you know, I'm getting to the point where if I had more space in the house, I would roast my own coffee, because it is so difficult to just find a light roast.
Yeah.
Because I prefer drinking espressos, and a dark espresso.
You don't like it.
No, it's way too. It's way too bitter.
Mm-hmm.
It's not fun to drink.
Right.
There's nothing there. It just tastes of earth and blech, you know. And that's kind of what's gonna happen. That's what's gonna happen with your music, is that people are gonna tell you a particular thing that they like,
Right.
and you're gonna put it out there, and then people are actually gonna be very unimpressed with it.
Right. I have another example. So, for the longest time, I didn't really like scrambled eggs that much.
Right.
So I realised why. It's because when you think of scrambled eggs, and you go to every bed and breakfast in the country and you get scrambled eggs,
I never get scrambled eggs.
you can basically take it off your plate and bounce it off the floor. It's so it's so rubbery, right? Turns out that's not how you do scrambled eggs, right? So they're supposed to, you know, when you're not supposed to scramble them for a start. You know, you see people that get a fork and they're like scrambling it on the pan. You're not supposed to do that. You're supposed to flip it like an omelette, right, until it's all cooked. But as soon as the watery, uncooked egg has disappeared, as soon as it's disappeared, it's on the plate. It should be creamy. It should be creamy in texture. And the minute I started making scrambled eggs like that, I was like, oh, this is right. I get it now. So I've been told all these years that this is scrambled eggs, but there are actually other ways of doing it.
Yeah, no, totally. It's like
Same with coffee. Like if you like dark roast, then that's your jam. Then fine.
No, totally. Yeah,
But it's not the only way of doing it.
and it's not. It's exactly. It's not the only way of doing it. 100%. Which kind of ties. That kind of leads into the next point very nicely.
Right.
Which is, don't tie yourself down too much to conventions set by your scene. Just because everybody is doing something one way doesn't mean that you also have to do it that way. You know,
Metal
I made
band
this
logos.
example last time where I was like, you know, if let's say you're involved in like the black metal scene and everybody's singing songs about Satan and death and people dying and war and gnarly stuff, and you're sitting there going like, I like the music, but the subject matter I'm not that into, and you want to be a life-affirming black metal band, then do that. Stopping you. You know what I mean? And it's things like, and sometimes it's really stupid things. Like it's little things you don't even realize are a thing. Like every single like sort of like dream pop or like shoegaze band that I've seen, they all play jazz master looking like guitars and
Right,
like
okay.
Sort of like Fender style guitars and stuff like that. Bassist is always playing like a 4-string jazz or something.
Yeah.
What if you want that extended range? Why not play a 5-string?
Second tom taken off. So it's only one rack tom and a floor tom.
Feel free, like, experiment. I mean, there's going to be a limit to how much you can push something. Because at some point, the music is not going to be of that scene anymore, right?
That was the thing with the logos as well for like metal bands. They all look like a cat has scratched a blackboard or something. It's just left like white scratch marks on a black canvas like that. That's every metal band. Well, what was it? Death metal? I don't know what genre.
Yeah.
They all look the same. I'm like that's. You look at I love looking at the posters, gig posters. It's just they all look the same. I'm like, that's a perfect. If you want to stand out on a poster, make your logo totally different. But like, what's that one? Like, but there is a thing as well. I've heard that if your logo doesn't look like that, then they don't put your logo on the poster because it ruins the aesthetic of the thing.
I've heard that. At that point, that scene needs a reform.
Yeah, it depends on. There's some people will not print the logo unless it looks like that. I've heard that very occasionally. It's not every case, but it's funny.
But yeah, that's a way to be authentic. If you start tying yourself down to like certain little traditions that you're like, I wish we didn't do that, or this doesn't make sense, or because you're wanting to strike a limit. You're wanting to strike the balance of I belong to this scene, and like this is the kind of music I make.
Yeah.
And standing out from everybody else as well, and not sounding literally like every other band that's there.
I like looking at different things like that, where you look across and see what other people are doing. See if you see everyone doing the same thing. That's a great opportunity to do something different. Because if you should be worried if you're trying to get into something, doesn't matter what it is. Could be music, could be anything related. Starting a business, and you're looking around at your competition, and they all look the same. Then that's good. But if they're all different, if they're all slightly different, you've got a harder time to try and stick out from the crowd. But see if everyone's doing the same thing. You've got it easy. You can just do it differently, and you'll stick out immediately. That's. I mean, it's not like going out your way and be like, I'm going to try and be authentic, and it's the balance between you need to be authentic, but not too conformist. So, if you try too hard to be authentic, you end up becoming nothing. I'm just me, man. You're just weird. You're trying to be quirky, trying to be weird. It's not. Nah.
Yeah.
So if you're in a particular genre, and there's loads of bands in your genre that you could literally be at any one of their gigs and not know one from the other, then that's a good opportunity to stick out and do something do something a bit different, become a little bit more authentic, and rather than conforming to what you think you should be writing in your genre. And don't be afraid to go like, you're playing punk, and everything in punk is like at a particular tempo, and it's all in 4/4.
Yeah.
Like, we're gonna do a 7/8 song, and
Or we're going to do a slow song.
we're gonna do a slow song. Yeah, harmonies, like pop, sort of punk bands never really have harmonies.
Unless you're, but then that's when you start going into pop punk territory.
Right. Right.
No, I'm being silly. But you're right. Yeah. Stuff like that. All the bands seem to have 2 guitars, bass, drums, singer.
Yep.
Our singer plays a little bit of keys. Let's give him a synth. Make him play some weird lead lines.
Yeah.
Or pads or whatever.
Have you ever been in a situation where you're jamming something and someone comes up with something and you're listening to it, and someone in the rehearsal studio goes, "Oh, I don't know how that would be received in the X scene."
Mm-hmm.
If that happens, like, just don't, just whatever, just let it happen.
If you I'm going to say something a bit dangerous, I guess. If that happens and you think that thought, then you should definitely add it in.
Yeah.
If you're thinking, "Oh, what are they going to make of that? Are they going to like it? Are they not going to like it?" If they're not going to like it, if you're in a scene that's that conservative, then yeah, shake it up.
Yeah.
100%.
So that brings us kind of on to the next one. It's rehearsing. I've got literally just one thing. It's just honesty.
Yeah, I had a look at it and I was like, it is just be honest about your honest about a bunch of different things, but like honest when it comes to ideas and when you're working with each other, and then honesty about time commitments and for rehearsal and things like that.
Just everything.
Honesty is best policy.
Yeah. I've worked in amateur dramatics, mentioned a few times, and they're probably the least authentic people I've ever met.
I agree. I'm so glad I don't know. I don't want to like jinx myself in case I find myself doing that kind of work again, but that kind of work can be tough sometimes.
It's really hard work. And that the people are hard work to deal with.
Yeah, it's hard work.
But they there's an example I think of. I did a production maybe like 5 years ago, and I was doing like, it was a sort of pantomime type situation. So I was doing the music for it, like backing tracks and sound effects and things like that, and this sound stuff. And there was this girl. I wasn't the musical director. There was no musical director really. It was just kind of, I made the tracks, gave it to the club, and then they would sing the stuff on stage, and that was it. I would turn up at the show and play all the sound effects and stuff. But there was a girl who was struggling with one of the songs, not because it was not in her range. It was in her range perfectly, but for whatever reason, she sung the entire song all the time a semitone out. So there was a semitone difference. She was like a semitone flat or sharp from the backing track, and this was it. Like, because I wouldn't be through the rehearsal stages. I wouldn't be there because it's not my job. I was just there for the show. Like, I would make the tracks and then turn up and play them at the show. But there would be people set aside to help teach the cast through the rehearsal process. So I turn up, and then she's singing this thing like absolutely awfully out of key. She's singing it perfectly in her own key, but not to the key of the song. And one of the people that would be responsible for making sure that the music would be okay came up to me and was like, "Oh, what can you do about that, eh? Like that's that poor girl and all this. And I was like, has anyone spoken to her? Oh, no. I was like, well, she was like, what are we supposed to do? What are we supposed to do? And I was like, tell her? Oh, you can't tell her. Why not? Well, it'll hurt her feelings. I was like, what would hurt your feelings more? Singing for like a week's worth of shows out of tune and not be told, or be told and then get it right for the show? What's worse? I think singing it out of key 7 nights in a row is a pretty bad one.
Oh, yeah.
And not know. Like, she was needing help, and no one was willing to say, that's bad, let's fix it.
Yeah.
Because that's confrontational.
Yeah.
So they would rather just, like, leave it.
Yeah. Like, when I've worked with bands and stuff, one of the things that I look out for is, do they... how good are they at telling me if I need to do something different? And I like it. I like it when I work with somebody and they're like, actually, could you do this, or the way you're playing that is not right. It should be like this. That's good. It means that people are being active and are listening and want the best for
The whole thing.
for the group. Rather than like, let's not
talk about
let's
it.
not let's not talk. Let's not hurt their feelings. We don't want them to get upset. I'll be upset. Would I even be upset at this point? I don't know. Like, I guess when I was really immature, I'd maybe be like, oh, can't believe I got it wrong.
Right.
But now it's just like, oh, I got it wrong. Oops. It happens.
Yeah, I mean, it's maturity. But
Yeah.
like, there was another example that at a different time, it was the same sort of situation where I came in at the last stage. This was another show with amateur dramatics. These people they tend to have quite big egos, so they're really bad at the whole criticism thing. But one of them was struggling a bit, and it was a bit, maybe out of their range or whatever. But we couldn't lower it because it was a choir, and if you lower it, then nobody could reach it. So it was a case of you just need to learn it. And they were struggling. No one was really helping, and I was like, right, I'm going to step in here. Like, I'm not supposed to, and I'm not technically being paid to do that, but I'm going to go and help. So I sat with a person, and we went through the song, and bit by bit, and I showed her where the problems were, and like I would play the song, go, right, stop, you're a wee bit flat there. Let's tighten that up a bit. That was really good. Keep that the same. And then we would run it through, and then we got it really good, and it was great for the show. But apparently, she, after having this rehearsal, went back to the cast and was like, oh, I can't believe, like, he was like totally like just telling me like I was flat here and flat there, like just telling me like all this, like this isn't good, or this, and she couldn't comprehend that someone would be criticizing what she was doing because she's never had it before. Like, what you're doing wasn't the best there. Let's try and improve that. Never been done.
That's insane.
She was like, oh, he was telling me like I was flat. I was like, well, yeah.
Because you were.
Because you were. Like, it's not an attack on your character.
No.
It's just like, let's make it the best it can be. Like, that's how you get to that, is by pointing it out. So if you're in a band and somebody's doing something that you know is wrong, and you're too chicken to bring it up and go, I think you're doing that wrong. Can we want to try? If you're too chicken to do that, you're just going to end up playing the wrong stuff live on stage in front of people.
Yeah.
Why would you want to do that?
It's bad.
So be authentic. Actually tell the truth and be like, okay, let's address what needs to be addressed and not just ignore it. So we can actually get better as a band. Just be honest. So, yeah, I thought about recording as well. So this was a realization I had about 5 years ago. Well, I had it before then, but I'd kind of ignored it. Because, me stupid. So recording as a band rather than individually. So a more authentic recording.
Yeah.
Getting people who would have known, getting a band all in one room playing together at the same time, it sounds better.
Yeah. There's this I remember talking, I'd suggested that there was a band I was playing with, and I basically suggested to them, the studio we were recording in, big enough to have
Right.
basically the whole band
Right.
just do it as a live track, each song. And this person had ran it by somebody else that they knew, and and they were like, "What? You're gonna record it all in the one room? What, you think you're like good musicians or something? Like the Rolling Stones or something? You crazy? You're gonna do it all in?" And like, and then after that they decided to not do it as a live track,
Right.
and I was a bit disappointed
Right.
because I was like, I mean, the track still ended up coming out sounding good, I think, but I just think it would have sounded so much better with just the drummer and maybe bass player on it and rhythm on like a click track and just play
Yeah.
and done.
This is something I've noticed as well that has blown my mind recently, and I've only just discovered this, and it is the truth for every band that I've recorded in this regard. It blows my mind, and you'll probably not believe me, but overall, when a band records together in one room, it sounds immensely superior.
Yeah.
However, see when you solo the tracks, individual instruments, they sound really bad.
No, I believe you.
See your bass. So the latest EP that we've just recorded, some of your bass tracks are like on their own aren't that tight, but when you play them together with the kit, they are perfectly in sync with each other. But because we were in the room together, it just gelled. All the little imperfections, the perfections, the imperfections, the weird stuff that musical magic that happens in a studio all made sense together.
Yeah.
But when you hear the parts individually, it's like, huh? See, when you listen to the bass, when it's in the full mix, like, oh, that bass is popping, man. It's amazing. You listen to it on its own, it's like, boom, 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 boom. It's like, huh? But when in the last album, when I had you in, you just recorded your bass on your own, and it sounds, the whole thing as a whole sounds okay, but there was something missing. There was a sort of spice missing. When you hear the bass on its own, it sounds great as its own thing. But when it's so bizarre, like, because there's a cool rhythm thing you do in one of the tracks. I think it's Hill Street at the end. At the last part, there's a cool rhythm thing you do, and it sounds sick with the drums. But when you hear it on its own, it's so out of time.
You need to show me this
with the drums,
after recording.
With the drums, it sounds pristine.
Yeah.
I can't get over this, and it's the same with every band I do this with.
Yeah.
It's bizarre, like, but it just fits. It's just so like in sync.
Yeah, it's this, and you can do this with any band, present and past. One of the best examples. Example that comes to mind is Led Zeppelin. If you like solo everybody's performances, like you'd be sitting there going, "These guys are musicians."
Yeah.
Like, really? But then you put the whole thing together.
It's like,
wow.
magic.
Adam Neely did something similar where I can't remember if it was Rick Beato quantized. Quantized
John
the drum.
Bonham.
John Bonham's. John Bonham's drums, and it sounded
hot garbage.
It was so bad. It was really, really bad. And Adam Neely did a similar thing where he auto-tuned like certain singers' performances, and it was just like the life just got totally sucked out of it. You know, to bring it into, you know, Adele's latest single, whole track is completely sung, totally natural.
Yeah.
No auto-tune whatsoever.
Right.
And as a musician, you know, somebody who has trained their ears for a certain amount of time, I'm hearing it and I'm going, yeah, that note I guess is a bit sharp, or you know, whatever. But then if you actually were to tune it, something gets taken away from the music, which I guess kind of goes into this next point, which is don't obsessively fine tune or perfect your tracks.
No.
Don't
do it.
Just don't do it. I don't know it's just like it does seem like a recent thing. You know, everybody wants like really sparkly, clean, perfect tracks. But then when you have like a sparkly, clean, perfect track, that's all it is. It's you know,
it's not human.
It's not.
It's just robot music.
It's just exactly. You know, it's like it's funny though, because like even with like people who make purely electronic music, they make almost deliberate mistakes to make the music more interesting, to make the synths and whatever they're using totally glitch out.
Yeah.
And you know,
it's funny, human beings, they like symmetry, but not perfect symmetry.
Yes.
So when it's too perfect, we find it there's this odd
uncanny valley.
Not uncanny valley, yeah. So when it's striving for symmetry, but not quite getting there, that's human. It's the analog digital thing that I talked about a while back, that whole theory I have of human beings prefer 0 to 1, not 1 or 0. So it's we prefer imperfections. You know, striving for something perfect, but not absolutely perfect. It's obviously because if it's just rubbish, we don't like it. If it's actually striving for something like an ideal, it doesn't necessarily have to be perfect, but it's like a face. A human face is symmetrical, but it ain't symmetrical.
No,
it's not. It's clearly trying to be symmetrical, but it's not perfectly symmetrical. Do you know what I mean?
You know, like a classic example is to like put a mirror up, you know, to the middle of your face, and all of a sudden you look like, you know, an Oblivion NPC.
Yeah.
You know, like absolutely horrifying. Like, you know.
Yeah. So it's, I don't know, it's a weird psychological thing. It's just polishing things to the nth degree. I think things are like that now.
You know, if you're listening to like, again, so like bass track, or like one of the guitar tracks, and there's a little bum note, right? But you don't notice it with a full band. Leave the bum note in.
Yeah.
It will, because it you know.
I always do.
It will just add to the thing.
Yeah.
You know.
I don't quantize anything. The only time I'll quantize is if someone has made a genuine mistake. Then it's quite jarring, and I don't have another take to replace it with. Yeah. Then I'll shift it. If it sticks out and it doesn't sound nice, I'll move it. But I don't, like, there's some engineers who quantize every single note of a performance. And that's just, I don't get it. Why are you doing that? You're taking the individuality out of that person's playing, and it could be anybody. It's just a robot playing notes. That kind of like a subtopic. Authenticity. I think the reason why authenticity seems like it's going out of fashion is because of the way human beings are now interacting. So social media. Social media is a platform or platforms where you create an avatar of yourself. And an avatar is an inauthentic representation of yourself. It's usually the best version, or the best, in your opinion, version of yourself. So it's the photograph of you wearing your best clothes, looking your best, on holiday, eating this amazing food, and it's always it's an inauthentic, because you can't get an authentic representation on social media. It's not possible, because you can't, in its current format anyway, because the most authentic sort of interaction you can have with a person is face to face, because you get everything all the one go. You can't get that on social media yet. Maybe in another 20 years we'll have some platform that brings us more in touch. Like video calling is pretty good.
Yeah.
You get a fairly decent interaction with someone that's almost as authentic as being there. But social media, creating an avatar, a profile, there's nothing authentic about it, and it promotes inauthenticity. It actually wants you to be less authentic. It gives you filters to change your face and weird effects that you can put in your photos to make it seem better than it actually is. And I think that's the reason why authenticity is on the downslope. It's because of the way we interact now since 2005, 6, 7, increasingly in the last 5 years anyway. It's just not a platform that fosters authenticity. I don't think it is.
That's why I don't really use it anymore.
Yeah, because you know it's not authentic. Occasionally you'll get someone who's like, I'm rebelling against it. Here is my like unfiltered face.
Yes.
I've just woken up thing. You know, that kind of thing as well. So
even then, that has a touch of inauthenticity. It's like, did you really just wake up like that? Really?
yeah,
really?
Right.
Really? You know, that sort of thing.
Yeah. So yeah, just a side thing. The authenticity. The reason why authenticity does so well now is because it's in short supply. So what you're seeing now is like long form podcasts like this, where it's just genuine unscripted conversations, and they're really popular. Like some of the most popular podcasts out there are just authentic conversations. They're not scripted. They're not sound bites. They just are what they are. And I think the reason why they do so well is because that's what people want, and it's what's lacking. Like in the last 10 years, social media has just delivered us this inauthentic crap, and people are thirsty for some like proper authenticity. So yeah, that was just a side note. And last year, performing. So authenticity when performing. So enjoy yourself.
Yeah.
The performance will benefit from it. So
unless you're not enjoying yourself, in which case that's another problem.
yeah. Well, I'm thinking back to when I was 18, jumping up on stage. I was obsessed with thinking, all that was in my head the whole time I was playing is like, what do I look like right now to people when I'm playing? I wonder how I come across. Is this how drummers are supposed to look when they're playing drums? Am I doing it right? You know, and I'm thinking of like famous drummers, like what do they do when they perform? What moves do they do? And now it doesn't even enter my head now. I'm just like, oh, whatever.
Yeah. I was kind of lucky in the respect of like that I didn't really think about what I looked like when I played. I just played.
Right.
And then, you know, when people would come up and would give me comments like, oh, you're really fun to watch perform. And I'm like, well, that's good. I'll just keep doing what I'm doing then.
Yeah.
You know, which isn't anything special. I just I don't know. I just play.
Yeah.
Move about. You know, and this this is tied down to like there are like it's almost like it's a callback to one of the previous points. You know, if everybody in your scene, you know, jumps about all the time, you don't feel comfortable jumping around, don't jump around. And it's the same thing, like where I come from, right? Being animated when you're playing bass in my scene doesn't really seem to be a thing. As in, like actually moving about the stage and doing things. You know, like whenever I've seen a jazz performance,
Yeah.
a bass player always looks really upset or really like bored, and
They're just gonna sit there.
or sometimes they don't look bored, but their face is making some really horrible, tortured expressions.
Right.
You know,
But when you look back, like to like the old jazz, like the 30s and 40s, and videos, those guys were fleeing off their nut. Like there's some those guys with the upright basses, they were like proper, like but they were all on cocaine. So
yeah, yeah, exactly.
so it just depends on.
Yeah, and if they did look bored, it was probably because they were on heroin. The other one,
yeah.
they were from the West Coast instead.
Yeah.
But yeah, just do what you feel comfortable doing, and just have fun, really, when you're performing.
Yeah.
And if your way of having fun and being comfortable is doing like a John Mayung and just standing perfectly still and just playing, you know, really intricate bass stuff, that's fine too.
Yeah.
Whatever.
As long as it's authentic.
Yeah. And this is another, which I guess kind of ties in, is if you don't enjoy playing a song anymore, then don't play it.
Right.
And this is something that, you know, not an originals band, but my wedding bands kind of decided to do, was there were just songs that were making certain members of the band feel either apathetic or just totally miserable. It would get to the point where it would come up on a set list, we'd go,
Yeah.
you know. And then we just identified those songs, and then we went, right, we're not playing them anymore.
Yeah.
And yeah, we did go through that moment of like, wait, we're not going to play them anymore? But we're a wedding band. And other wedding bands play those songs. So we have to play those songs. It's like, no, we don't have to.
No.
Especially if we really hate playing it, because nobody's going to come up to the dance floor if we're playing these songs and we're visibly hating it. You know, or even if we're trying to hide it, it's going to come across one way or another. So we just got rid of them. Nobody misses them.
Yeah.
Nobody misses the songs, you know, and it's fine.
Yeah.
It's grand.
Yeah.
And to bring it back to like maybe like an originals kind of a band, the first example that popped in my head was Radiohead. You know, and they wrote that Creep, which is one of their biggest songs, and they don't play it live.
Sick of playing it, probably.
They don't like playing it, so they've just stopped playing it.
Fair enough.
You know, that's fine.
There'd be a lot of annoyed fans, but tough.
Yeah, no, exactly. Yeah. You know, if you're really just there because of Creep and you're not in, like, then it's fine. Go like listen to the record, like, and that's fine. Do you know what I mean? You know, if there's songs that you wrote, and you just don't like playing them anymore, then just stop playing them. Yeah, simple as that. You know, just move on. Put it to bed. Put it away.
Yeah.
You know?
Maybe bring it back later. You know, it doesn't mean it's gone forever.
Totally. You know, you might bring it back because you're like not sick of it anymore.
Yeah.
There you go.
Yeah, cool. Yeah, that was cool. Wanted to do something like this for a while, but because we always talk about like be authentic, be yourself, but not just addressed it as an actual topic. But yeah, just that whole point about the authentic stuff tends to do better, or it's easier to do better with authentic stuff than manufactured stuff, musically and just as a person. I think authentic people, you want to have authentic people in your life more than inauthentic people.
Mm-hmm. That was one of the nice things about leaving, secondary school and then going to university, and then actually leaving university and then actually getting to actually make friends with people that you don't have to be around. You start hanging out with people who are themselves.
Yeah. Yeah, you're not, because the class you get put in is just, it's arbitrary.
Oh yeah.
Totally. And you have to be sociable with those people, and you just happen to be in a class with them. You didn't pick them, which is why you get a lot of dramas, because you might not have necessarily picked those groups of friends. So you end up clashing personalities and stuff, and weird dramas happening in college. It happened when I was there anyway. Probably it's just the same anywhere.
Yeah.
Because when you're forced into a situation with people that you maybe not aligned with, it's a recipe for disaster, because you wouldn't necessarily hang out with those people given the chance elsewhere.
Yep.
But yeah, when you leave uni and stuff, it's like, oh, I want authentic friends, like, or maybe you don't. Maybe you're into that. Maybe you're studying drama and you prefer to have inauthentic people. That's a stereotype. I'm sorry.
Yeah, I know it.
Yeah. Anyway, cool. That was a good one. So, as always, give us a wee follow on Spotify and a review on Apple Podcasts if you can.
As authentic as possible, please.
Yeah. This podcast is authentic, 5 stars. Or
yes.
It's not authentic enough or whatever. Yeah, and please share with anyone you think might like the podcast, any musician pals. Share it on. Have a listen to some episodes, because I think I've said before, like, because we deal with like individual things on topics on specific episodes, there'll be an episode out there for anyone. So there's some people who like listen to episodes that they like the sound of more, because you see that like there'll be a lot of listens on certain ones and not others. So people, like, I'll get messages from people saying, "Oh, I listened to your episode on this or that. Like, oh, that sounds intriguing." So have a flick through. If you're maybe not listened to every episode, have a flick through and see what takes your fancy. Sometimes I do that as well. Like, oh, I like that. I like the sound of that. We're getting nearer and nearer to the 100. So I was thinking maybe doing like a big meaty 5-parter or something, like summing up the entire, like, big chunky boy. But we'll see. Just tying a nice little pretty bow on the 100th episode. So I'll need to start planning that. Because we did that right way back at the start. Like, it was like a 5-part chunk. This is like a level up your band guide, distilled. So I'll maybe do that for our final 100th episode. But yeah, hope this was helpful, useful, informative. And if it wasn't, well, yeah, whatever. What am I going to do? But
call your mum. I don't know.
So yeah, hope you all have a good week and see you next time.